And a very good Friday morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Joe Benigno back with you again. It's the Oh the Pain podcast. It's Friday, March 14th, and it's 2025. The Joe Benigno the Pain podcast brought to you by the Hackensack Brewing Company, by You Need a Discount Tire, and of course, our good friends at Manscaped. Don't forget, April 4th, the next live podcast at the Hackensack Brewing Company, Friday, April 4th. It's the opening day for the Mets at home, the home opener against Toronto. We'll be doing the live podcast that night. JJ John Jastrzemski will join me, and should be a very, very interesting night. So want everybody to come out. Now, I just want to give a little shout out. My grandson with a big win last night in their league. I don't know what the name of the league is. A bunch of sixth graders. They're playing in a championship game coming up on Saturday at 5:30. This is in Hawthorne, beautiful Hawthorne, New Jersey. My grandson Trae. They won last night to advance to the finals for the second year in a row. They went 8-2 on the year, and they're playing in a championship game against the team that's beat them twice. The only two losses they have is against this team they're playing for the championship. That game will be Saturday night, 5:30. Want to give a shout out also to the head coach who does a tremendous job for them, Tom Spirito. Really, I tell you, this is a well-coached group of sixth graders. I'll tell you, they move the ball well. They take care of the ball. They play a nice game. So they pass the ball very well. 5:30, want to give a shout-out again to Trae, Tom Spirito, the coach, and all of that. And the Blackjack Mulligans is the name of Trae's team. So they'll play in a championship game Saturday, 5:30 in Hawthorne, New Jersey. We will be there. Want to give them a shout out. All right, a lot of things going on. You got the college basketball championship week going on. Tonight you got the semifinals of the Big East tournament. St. John's, who took care of Butler yesterday, plays Marquette for the third time tonight. Marquette getting by Xavier by 2 in their game yesterday afternoon. And then at night, the nightcaps, Creighton got by in double overtime over DePaul. Terrific game. And they will play UConn, who beat Villanova. So semifinals tonight, the early game, St. John's, Marquette. The late game, Creighton and UConn. All four of those teams are going to be in the NCAA tournament no matter how this plays out. Would really like to see St. John's, win these next two games, win the Big East tournament, and wind up, maybe with a 2 seed, although mostly everybody, all the pundits, if you will, Joe Lenardi and all those guys, right now have St. John's as a 3. I don't know if they lose, if they don't win the tournament, if it really affects them. I think that they could get a 2 if they win the Big East. I think that more than likely they're probably going to be a 3 seed. We can hope that they stay in the East because the first round's in Providence. Round 2, the Sweet 16 games are in Newark at the Rock. So that would be very beneficial to St. John's as well, basically them staying home. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, the doubleheader tonight, St. John's Marquette, 6:30. And after that, it'll be Creighton and UConn in the Big East. Now, bunch of injuries right. By the way, I want to throw this out there, okay? And I mentioned this before. I don't know if I mentioned this last week or not. UConn women is my prediction. They're going to win the NCAA championship again. Remember, we saw them. They saw them earlier in the year just dismantle South Carolina, and the defending champions beat them by 30 points down in Columbia. So that was, to me, that was the signature win of the year for UConn. They play. Let me tell you, the UConn women play as good a brand as defense as anybody I've seen in the country. I mean, they just play smothering defense under Gino Auriemma. I believe they're almost 3-1 is the number to win. I think they're plus 290 to win the national championship. I would not. I would seriously consider the UConn women winning again. Paige Beckers, what's her name? AZ Fudd. They got a damn good team. They play excellent D. Check out. They beat everybody by 30. I mean, I don't think they've had a close game all year. They lost 3 games. They did lose 3 games. They lost to Notre Dame. I forget who else they lost to, but they have lost 3 games this year somehow. But they are. If I'm a betting man, I love definitely see them in the Final Four, and I think they're going to win the women's championship. So keep an eye on that if you're into the women's college basketball. As far as the men, who knows? I saw where Cooper Flagg got hurt last night. I don't know if he's going to play in the rest of the ACC tournament or not. It doesn't really matter. Duke's going to be a number one seed anyway. It looks like Auburn. What did I see? Auburn, Duke, Florida, and Houston. I think that's what Lenardi has as his number one line right now for the number one seeds in the NCAA tournament. Of course, Sunday is Selection Sunday, and we'll find out, about the men and the women coming up. But championship week this week, and always good as we get really pumped up now for the NCAA tournament. With the college basketball going on, okay, and with the NIL money now that they're paying out to these guys, now I don't know if this has changed yet, but isn't it time? Because remember the NCAA took away championships, from certain teams because of violations, took away Final Four appearances and all of that. Have they reinstated that for certain teams? And I remember a bunch of them where that was the case. I go all the way back, and I know most people don't, but I do, back to 1971 when Villanova went to the NCAA final. They lost to UCLA in the finals that year, but they had a kid named Howard Porter who was their big star, who actually signed with an agent, I guess a week or so, whenever it was, before the championship game against Villanova, before the final against UCLA, before the Final Four started. And they wound up taking away their Final Four appearance there. They scratched it like it never happened because he signed with an agent, Howard Porter. Have they given Villanova that Final Four appearance back from 1971? Right? How about what they did to UMass, John Calipari's UMass team back in 1996, the team with Marcus Camby on it? Remember, they went to the Final Four as well. They wound up losing. I guess Kentucky beat them in the Final Four. Kentucky went. That Final Four was actually at the Meadowlands. At the old Brendan Byrne Arena. And Kentucky wound up winning the championship, beat Syracuse in the finals that year. But they took away UMass's Final Four appearance. Have they given it back now? Because Marcus, I don't know what he did, took money from some. I forget what the deal was. Because, but I mean, these kids weren't getting any money back then. Did they give back UMass's Final Four? Can they put it up there and in Amherst? Can they do that now? That banner? How about the banners they took away from the Fab Five? How about that? Have you ever seen the 30 for 30 on the Fab Five? The great Michigan team with Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and Juwan Howard and Ray Jackson and Jimmy King and all of those guys. Have you seen that? I don't know if you've seen it or not. But they took away because, stuff happened afterward with Webber that he'd gotten money. There's a great scene in there if you've seen it, right? Where Webber goes into the bookstore wherever at the University of Michigan, and there's his jersey selling for like $100 or whatever the hell it was, and he ain't getting a dime from it. And they wound up they took away the two Final Four banners, from 1992, 1993. Remember, they lost to Duke in the finals in 92. They lost to North Carolina in the finals in 93. That was the infamous no timeout. Webber calling timeout when he didn't have any, which wound up sealing the fate of the Wolverines in that game against Carolina. But they took away their banners. They put them back up now? Now that everybody's getting NIL money? Have they exonerated Chris Webber? Because I know he had some issues there with Michigan because of that. I mean, come on. And how much money did the school make off the Fab Five, by the way? That's another one. And then, of course, you even go farther. Remember 2013, when Rick Pitino's Louisville team won the national championship. I happened to be down there for that in Atlanta. Remember, they beat Wichita State in the Final Four game, and then they knocked off Michigan for the national championship that year. Louisville, it was Pitino's second title. Maybe he won at Kentucky in 96. And Pitino is the only head coach in the history of college basketball to win national championships with two different teams. Nobody else has done it. And they, I remember there was recruiting violations, that whole thing. Remember, you had the hooker with the team or whatever it was, right? I forget. Trying to get recruits to sign, not that anybody else ever did anything like that, right? But let me ask you a question. Have they given that? Because they kind of took that championship away from Louisville. Have they put it back now? I mean, what a joke that is. The NCAA, the most hypocritical organization in the history of the world, okay? Maybe outside the Democratic Party right now. It's just unbelievable. It really is. And I just hope that at all these schools have gotten, their banners, their championships, their Final Four appearances back and reinstated again, because that's absolutely a joke. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Complete disgrace, especially with the money that these NIL schools are getting. Not that the schools, but the NIL money that's going to the players now as well. It should be. What a disgrace! I'm telling you. These schools make tons of money off this. The NCAA makes tons of money off this, and then they got to show you, again, that they are how righteous, and they got a virtue signal, and take stuff away from the schools. What a joke! So I hope all of that's been reinstated. I really do, because that stuff like that just makes me absolutely crazy, especially now that they're actually paying these guys. You know what I mean? That they're actually getting paid. So anyway. I had to throw that in there. That stuff makes me crazy. But I am pumped up for the NCAA tournament. I'm rooting for St. John's. I want to see St. John's get to the Final Four. To me, with the kind of years St. John's has had, anything, you could say, well, get to the Sweet 16. No. They need to get to the Final Four. They do. I mean, I'm sorry. And I believe if Pitino would take St. John's to the Final Four, I think is the only coach in history to take 4 different schools to the Final Four. Remember, he took Providence back in 1987, actually Kentucky a couple times, won the championship with them, and then, of course, Louisville. So, and I believe the only other guy to do that is Calipari, who did it at UMass, who did it at Memphis, and, of course, did it at Kentucky. And now, of course, he's in Arkansas. But nevertheless, we'll see. But to me, as good a year as St. John's has had, anything short of the Final Four. I mean, even if they get to the Elite Eight and lose a tough game in the Elite Eight to somebody, is that enough? Don't they have to get to the – I mean, haven't been to the Final Four since Chris Mullin and Walter Berry 40 years ago. Isn't it time now to see that happen? To me, I think they absolutely have to get there. Otherwise, to me, it's a disappointing year. It really is. But we'll see what happens. And, of course, Marquette tonight for the third time. Again, Marquette, St. John's, 6:30 in the Big East in the semifinals, and then Creighton and UConn. And really, when you look at those games, I don't know how much they really matter. Maybe for St. John's seeding, because all 4 of them are going to be in the Big East. And that's probably the only 4 the Big East is getting. Xavier got knocked out. I doubt they're getting in. Villanova got knocked out. I doubt they're getting in. And it's really a joke because, you see the SEC, and I know the SEC's had a great year. Not denying that. But they look like they're getting 12, 13 teams in the NCAA tournament. Something like that. It's crazy. And I just think the Big East gets absolutely no respect. And I've said this before. You go back to 2016. Remember, there was no championship in 2020 with the insanity of the COVID and all of that, right? So of the last 8 national championships, there's been 8 from 2016 through 24. You take away the one that didn't happen in 2020. 4 of the last 8 national champions have been out of the Big East. Villanova in 16 and 18, and in the last two years with UConn, right? But they get no respect at all as a league, right? They're probably only going to get the 4 teams that are playing tonight are going to be the only 4 teams that are going to make it in the NCAA tournament out of the Big East. And it's really a joke how that league gets absolutely no respect. I believe, I was thinking about this, how many national championships does the Big East have in their history? I think it's 11, because you got UConn has 6, Villanova has 3, and then you got 1 for Georgetown. And remember, when Syracuse won the national championship with Carmelo Anthony with Boeheim in 2003, remember they were in the Big East at that point. So I believe it's 11. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. I'm not sure if Louisville, when they won it in 2013, was in the Big East or not. Because remember, they were in the Big East for a while, too. Now they're in the ACC. But I'm not sure whether they were in the ACC then or the Big East, whatever it was. But no, you don't have to. No, you don't have to. No, it's not that big a deal. But it's at least 11 as far, from the Big East. And I was trying to think, how many does the SEC have? And I'm just looking in my lifetime, because Kentucky's got 8 overall. Remember, they won 4 with Adolph Rupp. And then since in my lifetime now, they've won 4. 1978 with Joe B. Hall when they beat Duke in the championship game. 96 with Pitino when they beat Syracuse in the Meadowlands. 98 with Tubby Smith, who basically took over for Pitino. Remember, he won the national championship in 98. And then the win with the Calipari in 2012 and Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, right? So those are the four that Kentucky won. Remember, Florida won the back-to-back under Billy Donovan, with Joakim Noah, Al Horford, Corey Brewer. That was 06 and 07. So that's 6 right there for the SEC. And I'm trying to think any other ones that they've won. Any other national championships for the SEC that I can think of off the top of my head in college basketball in my lifetime? No, I'm just thinking. I don't think so. No, you don't have to look at it. No, but thank you, darling. But I think that's it. I think the 2 for Florida, the 4 for Kentucky, and I'm just trying to think of anybody else in the SEC's won a national. Oh, Arkansas. That's right, 1994. Remember, Nolan Richardson in Arkansas won the national championship that year with Corliss Williamson. Remember, they beat UCLA in the final. Yeah. Okay, so that's no, not they didn't beat UCLA. They beat Duke in the final. Sorry, let me get that right. That was Grant Hill's senior year. They beat Duke in the final that year, 1994. So I got the SEC, 4 for Kentucky. This is just in my lifetime because Kentucky's actually won, 8 overall. But I'm just looking at my lifetime. 4 for Kentucky, 2 for Florida, 1 for Arkansas. So I got 7 out of the SEC, and I got 11 out of the Big East. Now, again, it's a different year and all of that, but just throwing that stuff out there. And I was thinking of this too. While we're doing college basketball, the 2 greatest college basketball. Now, I didn't see Bill Russell play in college. He won back-to-back national championships at San Francisco. They won 60 in a row at one point. Casey Jones and all that. Phil Wolpert, who nobody even knows who he is, was the head coach of those teams. But the 2 greatest college basketball players I've ever seen in my lifetime, obviously Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at UCLA, won 3 straight championships from 67 to 69 under John Wooten, went 80-2 in those 3 years. And then, of course, Bill Walton, also at UCLA. Remember they won back-to-back undefeated championships in 72 and 73. Remember they had the 88-game winning streak, which is still the all-time record for the men. The UConn women won, 110 in a row or something like that? Some ridiculous number like that. But the all-time winning streak for men in college basketball is 88 in a row. Nobody's doing that again, I can tell you right now. Remember, we have not had an undefeated national championship in college basketball since Bobby Knight's Indiana team back in 1976. That's the last time somebody went undefeated to win the national championship. So just think about that. Bill Walton did it 2 years in a row. I think Kareem's team did it the first year, his sophomore year. Because remember, back in the 60s and the early 70s, freshmen did not play. You couldn't play. You only played from a sophomore on. And the old story about the UCLA freshman team back in 1966, that, remember, UCLA had won back-to-back championships before Alcindor, before Kareem in 1964 and 1965. Remember, Walt Hazzard and Gail Goodrich in 1964 beat Duke in the final. And then in 65, led by Goodrich and Keith Erickson, they beat Michigan, the Cassie Russell team, in the final. So they won back-to-back even before the big guys started getting there. So people forget about that too. But just think of the 1966, the UCLA freshman team, Barry would kill would beat them up in practice all the time because they had Kareem, So anyways, let me throw that in there. Of course, the Bill Walton, remember they lost in the Final Four to David Thompson, Tom Burleson, Monty Tao, and Mo Rivers in 1974 to North Carolina State, that great North Carolina State team that beat UCLA in double overtime in the Final Four, one of the great games of all time. I think that actually was in North Carolina, too. I believe that game was in Greensboro. Pretty sure it was. And that ended the Bill Walton championship run. And he's, I know Walton's passed away now, but he always, that's like the worst loss of his lifetime, losing to NC State in that Final Four and, double overtime. That was one of the great, like I said, one of the great NCAA tournament games of all time. But just a little history, Kareem and Walton, unbelievable. And, of course, UCLA John Wooden won 7 straight titles and then, of course, won 10 in his overall run there at UCLA. I had a little help with a guy by the name of Sam Gilbert, who threw some money, threw a little money to the group there that nobody talked about that came out years later, but whatever. All right, let's get our, I'm rambling. Let's get our sponsors in, the Hackensack Brewing Company. Again, Friday, April 4th for the next live podcast. I'll be there with John Jastrzebski. Check it out. Located 10 minutes off the George Washington Bridge. Less than 30 seconds off Route 4 in beautiful Who Needs a House out in Hackensack. Tap room's open 4:30 to 10 on Monday through Friday, 2 to 10 Saturday, 12 to 8 Sunday, 78 Johnson Avenue, Hackensack. The great Mike Jones, the great TJ, the whole group over there. Check us out April 4th, the next live podcast. Again, that, of course, is a Friday, and that'll be after the Mets open their home season against the Toronto Blue Jays at Citi Field. So that should be a terrific night. Now, the Anita Discount Tire, check them out. See my son Johnny, his boss Ari, the whole group over there. They'll take care of you. Any work you need done on your car, you need your car inspected, whatever you need. You need tires, they'll take care of you. Did a great job fixing my power steering system, which needed some work, and thank God that's taken care of. That was a disaster for about 2 months. You ever try, I said this before, you ever try to steer a car without power steering? Try it. You better be a weightlifter, I can tell you right now. But we want to thank them. They did a great job, and check out Anita Discount Tire, Westwood Avenue in beautiful Rivervale, New Jersey. And, of course, our friends at Manscaped. Oh, do I love them? Basketball is here. The March Madness has started. Time to get yourself rolling with Manscaped. They're bringing in their starting five to take your game to the next level. The chaos of March is here. You got the point guard, the Lawnmower 5.0, which takes care of things down below and gives you that wonderful illusion of extra inches. You got the Chairman Plus, which is slick and dynamic. It takes care of your face, shaves your face. You look smooth. Your wife, whoever wants to touch you. You got the Small Forward, the Handyman, compact and clutch. It's for those critical moments. Oh, man, you know how those critical moments can be. You got the Beard Hedger that takes care of your face again, right? The Power Forward and the center, who's dominating in the paint. Of course, the centers now all shoot threes, which is a ridiculous too. But it keeps your scalp smooth, and you'll never get dunked on by stray hairs. How about that? Don't miss this opportunity. Your face and balls will thank you. Don't forget, check out my code PAIN, P-A-I-N, for 20% off and free shipping. Get ready to score big with Manscaped. And remember, Manscaped, they just don't have the Lawnmower 5.0 or the Beard Hedger. No. They got the underwear, which I love, keeps my balls right in place when I'm playing golf. Nothing worse. I had these underwear on yesterday. No, this is true. I went to Trae's basketball game. We talked about that already. I went there, and I'm sitting there in the stands, and my underwear. And I just got new underwear too, and my balls are hanging out, or at least one of them. And I'm like, it's the worst. You're sitting there, people don't know that you're like, if you only knew that my balls hanging out. But it's like terrible. So, I mean, the Manscaped underwear gets the job done for you. Just listen to me. They got nice T-shirts, too. They got shampoo and conditioner, which does a great job for your hair, and you look good, and you can use it as a body wash. Check it out, Manscaped. You know I love it. And again, insert the code PAIN for 20% off, free shipping, and get ready to score big with Manscaped. How much do I love them? Now, the Rangers actually won a game last night. They beat the Minnesota Wild in Minnesota in overtime. Braden Schneider scoring the game winner about a minute and a half into overtime on the setup from Panarin and JT Miller. A game the Rangers really, really needed. They had lost 4 in a row. And with that win, Columbus lost last night. With that win, the Rangers now get up to 70 points. They're actually tied with Columbus for the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. And wouldn't you know it, tomorrow night, a huge game in Columbus against the Blue Jackets. You know what? I was thinking about this. Can we call them the Straight Jackets? I mean, I don't know. You could call them the Columbus Straight Jackets, I guess, but the Blue Jackets. Anyway, but they play them in a big game tomorrow in Columbus. And remember, they played them last week at the Garden and got destroyed. Remember Columbus beat them 7-3 llast week at the Garden. That was the game where the Rangers scored 2 shorthanded goals on the same power play, right? And still lost 7-3. So, big game against Columbus coming up. Good win last night. The one thing about last night's game, and this has happened now 2 games in a row, bogus penalty calls on Matt Rempe that wound up costing the Rangers a goal. It cost them the game the other night against Winnipeg. The game they lost 2-1 in Winnipeg. Remember, a bogus power play, a bogus penalty called on Rempe when he was actually pushed into the goalie for Winnipeg, and they called the goalie interference on him when clearly he was pushed into him. And they blew that call. And, of course, Winnipeg scored the game-winning goal on that power play. And then last night, same thing. The Rangers are up 2. The Rangers, I guess, was it 1-0? Yeah, it was 1-0 Rangers. They call a bogus penalty on Rempe. I mean, it was a joke. Oh, he does, no doubt about it. And he's been playing really well. That line with Rempe, Brzezinski, and Brzezinski scored a goal last night. Johnny Brzezinski back home in Minnesota. Rempe, Brzezinski, and Brandon Ortman, who really have played pretty well that line. They called a penalty on Rempe, interference call that was, I mean, are you serious? If you saw the replay of this, you're like, what? And, of course, the Wild scored the tying goal. It actually was not a power play goal. They scored with like 2 seconds after the power play ended, but it was definitely set up by the power play. So 2 games in a row where bogus penalty calls on Matt Rempe have come back to hurt the Rangers. Now, they won the game last night anyway, but it really is amazing how they're, like my wife's just saying, there is a target on this kid's back. And only because he's 6'8" and such a presence out there. It really is. And he gets screwed. And he was pissed off last night. And had every right to be as he's sitting in the penalty box. I mean, come on. So that really gets me ticked off. But a big game tomorrow against Columbus. The Knicks play Saturday night against Golden State. That finish up their West Coast trip. They're 2-2 on the trip already. Remember, they lost the 2 games in L.A. to the Lakers and Clippers. They bounced back. They beat up Sacramento. They blew them out. And then won that overtime buzzer beater with Mikal Bridges hitting the jumper to win the 3-pointer to win it at the buzzer. And he had a big game, 33 points. Actually, after I guess he had a sit down with Tom Thibodeau about maybe they're playing too many minutes. So I don't know. But anyway, they won. So they're 2-2 on this trip. They play Golden State tomorrow night, and we'll actually try. Remember, Golden State beat them 2 weeks ago at the Garden, and they will actually try to beat a team that's a good team for a change. The Knicks, because they don't. They can beat everybody else. They're solidly on their way to the playoffs and probably the 3rd seed in the East. They're solidly on their way to a 50-win season, but we'll see if they can beat Golden State tomorrow night in Golden State. And last, but certainly not least, the baseball injuries, which we just had another one yesterday for the Mets. Jeff McNeil, I guess he's got an oblique. He's going to be out, I guess, at least a month or so. So the Mets have McNeil out for a month. They got Sean Manaea out for a month. They got Montas. Who knows how long he's going to be out. I don't think he's any good anyway. And you also have Francisco Alvarez out for a few months with a hamate bone break in his hand. So the Mets have some injuries. And, of course, the Yankees, Garrett Cole's getting Tommy John surgery. Stanton with his shoulders or whatever. Now he's got another injury. I mean, has anybody ever been more hurt than it used to be Mike Stanton, than Giancarlo Stanton? Anybody in the history of sports? Maybe Joel Embiid? Maybe Mitchell Robinson? Maybe John Abraham when he played for the Jets? I don't know. I mean, a lot of injuries there. There's no doubt about it. But, and of course, Luis Gil's out for a few months too, I think until July for the Yankees. So a lot of spring training injuries for the 2 New York teams. And we'll see how that goes down when all is said and done. One last thing, the NFL quarterback carousel. Still, Aaron Rodgers is not signed anywhere. I guess the Giants are a possibility. Now you're hearing the Giants may sign Joe Flacco for a stopgap, maybe, to be a stopgap quarterback. I guess they're also interested in Russell Wilson. You're hearing Russell Wilson to Cleveland. I don't know why anybody would want to go there. And then, of course, Rodgers, there's talk about him going to Minnesota. There's talk about him going to Pittsburgh. And I guess the Giants have offered him whatever. You know how I feel about this situation with Rodgers. I don't want to get into it. By the way, the Jets cut C.J. Mosley, who, was done. The injuries have caught up to him. If I'm C.J., I would retire. I don't think he has anything left in the tank. But nevertheless, everybody have a great, great weekend. check me out tomorrow, 10 to 1 on the Fan. Should be a very good show tomorrow, as it generally is. I mean, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe you don't think it is, but we'll be on tomorrow from 10 to 1. Check my podcast out on Monday. We're going to play a little golf today. By the way, the players off and running got a 3-way tie at the top right now between J.J. Spawn, Lucas Glover, and Camilo Villegas. You also got Scotty Scheffler, three under. He's only 3 shots back. Ricky Fowler, -4. Keep an eye on him. So always good to see the players. I only wish Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, and John Rahm, who, of course, are all on the LIV Tour, are playing in that as well. But that's a story for another day. Everybody, all the love. And, of course, God bless America.